It's really great to be here. Like I said, my name is Andrew Cron. I lead R&D for 8451 and Kroger. And before I kind of get into what we're going to talk about today, I think it's helpful for me to kind of talk through what. Sorry, I'm going to move this. There's a bar on my screen. There we go. Talk through what 8451 is. We'll give a lot of context for our talk. So 8451, not as well known, but our parent company, Kroger, of course, is the national retail grocery chain. You can see, we're not going to get into all the kind of stats about Kroger. You can see them there on the screen. But where 8451 plays is we take all of this very rich data from Kroger's first-party loyalty system. So many of you likely have shopped at a Kroger banner, and or in other grocers, of course, now have this as well. When you swipe your loyalty card, of course, you get discounts, and then you also get personalized offers, discount, and so on. That then creates a pipeline of data that 8451 uses in many ways. So I'll talk about the kind of three big ones. We of course create insights for our CPG partners, Kroger, and you can see the others. We also run Kroger's loyalty marketing program. So when you think about those personalized offers from Kroger or another banner, that's run by 8451, and of course Kroger Precision Marketing, the online advertising arm of Kroger as well, is run out of 8451. All that data and funding, of course, allows us to create also very meaningful insights back to the Kroger company. So with that, where my team sits is we are the analytics R&D group for 8451. So we get the really exciting opportunity to play in both spaces. So with this data, we of course help 8451 create better insights, execute better marketing campaigns, but we're also able to create advanced analytics, advanced data science for the Kroger parent company. So across supply chain operations, retail operations, merchandising, personalization, the list goes on and on. We're able to bring that innovation back into Kroger. So when we're talking about kind of progressing innovation in the space that I'm thinking about, this kind of helps set the stage for the context that I'm in. All right, so what we're going to talk through today is basically going to lay out our approach here for how we manage an innovation portfolio. I don't think we're going to talk through anything too mind-blowing, but hopefully maybe we'll take away some nuggets that you can take into your own practices. Basically, we're going to say the very short version is that managing innovation is a lot like managing any other kind of risk. So let's look at how others, say portfolio managers, manage risk, how we then kind of maybe improve the odds of the risk that we take, and of course, making sure that we get to the value at the end. So I think this goes without saying, but intentional innovation really does matter. I think, there's this McKinsey statistic. You can decide whether or not you believe it. But in general, it is my experience that industry leaders are often not satisfied with the pace or performance of their innovation. And I believe part of that is that there are just so many opportunities, both in terms of emerging technology and where they can be applied. It's very hard to find the right opportunity and then progress it fast enough, or honestly abandon it or pivot it fast enough to innovate at the rate that we need. In fact, I would argue that this slide is probably a little bit outdated, but I'll be honest, I kind of got tired of updating it because of how fast the world moves, right? And this is exactly the problem that we face. So what's the role of a foundational internal innovation team, in my opinion? We aim to bridge this gap between the potential opportunities. You see this emerging tech, maybe you see new methods or algorithms coming out of academic research, you see new emerging markets, new trends in your sector. But then, of course, your real day job is to create scalable, marketable, measurable product impact, right? Products for our customers. And getting from these potential opportunities to something that can be scaled is often very, very challenging. And it's not clear how you get there. And this is the type of innovation team that I want to look at today, is how do you build an excellent analytics organization that is able to bridge that gap between where the industry is going and, of course, what your business ultimately needs. So to make it not very formal, but a little bit more formal, this is our dilemma. We know emerging tech is valuable. You see it transform and disrupt all the time. You also know that deploying new capabilities is expensive, time-consuming, very risky. So how do we then reproducibly generate ROI, because that's ultimately what we care about, right? From from emerging technology. And I want to argue, I guess I'll claim more than argue, that this is very much like the challenge that, say, a venture capital investor has, or any investor has. They have many opportunities. They know that some of these investments will be extremely valuable, but it's unclear which will be. So what do they do? Well, they diversify, they manage their risk. They may also advise, connect, put folks on boards, for instance, to improve the odds of the investments that they've made. And of course, ultimately, they care about is having that path to an exit, to realizing the value. Is I'm going to take that analogy and look at how we can do that for something that's not so much investing in a company, potentially investing in a new analytics opportunity. All right, so managing risk. Of course, we all know that the more uncorrelated or less correlated investments that we make, the more our risk will decrease, right? So first of all, we have to create a diverse portfolio of investments, right? So if you think about what we're doing at 8451, we don't do all of our innovations, say, in merchandising or in personalization. Other extreme, we don't do all of our innovation in, say, supply chain, right? We do our best to diversify across a portfolio of investments, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a second. Of course, and this can be very challenging, but we have to not succumb to sunk costs as well. We fail fast and pivot, and especially in earlier technology innovation, it can be, and at least in our experience, unclear. It could take a while until you realize the value. So it's very helpful to codify your strategy and your process so that you can measure the process as it progresses and not just the outcomes at the end, because you may not get very many data points, or it may take quite a while. So how do we think about diversifying an innovation portfolio? Essentially, we try to make bets, if you want to put it that way, or have projects across as many of these, there could be more, but as many of these kind of pillars as possible. So yeah, you may think about quick wins, maybe something we already have a strong competency in a new area versus a new major initiative. We may look at this, I kind of alluded to this already, broad or different business applications. Look at different parts of the business, look at foundational versus saying we're going all in on one particular area. This stage of R&D can also be very helpful if it's possible. Moving everything all at once from early exploration to prototyping to helping the business deliver can be very challenging, one, because your stakeholders may become impatient, but also because it can take different talent through each of these stages. So to have a diversified pipeline, of course, helps us manage risk, but also manage the talent in the right way. And finally, diversifying across domains. And I have examples here. Deep learning, now maybe we'd say, or definitely would say, Gen AI or large language models. We may be tempted to put, it's very exciting to put all of our investments there, but we know that there's huge opportunities in, say, operations research or synthetic data or better machine learning platforms, and the list goes on and on. And we've noticed that as we diversify across more and more of these areas, we're able to more reliably almost always have a win of some kind. Now, of course, it's R&D, so there's many things that don't work out, but it allows us to kind of always have those wins moving through the pipeline. Of course, we want to have as many of those wins as possible, but it's a balance, right? We need to have as many investments, and I should really emphasize it here, as is feasible, right? So you could go to the other extreme and place tiny investments across many areas, and you're very diversified, it's true, but now kind of your odds of success have fallen so low, or the pace has fallen to be so slow because there's no momentum, there's not enough investment in any particular place. On the other extreme, too large of an investment may push us to kind of get all the way to the end, like one big bang, we're going to go from nothing to a full product. And I think there's two risks there. One, the reason I have it on this slide is that you're not able to make as many investments, as many bets in other places, but also you might not actually get to the right endpoint. And we hear all the time, and it's definitely true, that small incremental, let's try it, let's do an analysis, let's move again, can help us both make more bets in the meantime, let us pivot, and then also help us get to that more ideal end state. Right, and just really an emphasis here that this all sounds great. It's all fun to say. This can be very challenging to execute in practice. So whether you're in a product-led organization, using tools like Jira or something else, it's very important to codify this process and not just fall in love with the particular projects that we've chosen, because we've found that if we diversify and we just get excited about our set of projects, it's very hard to move off of them sometimes, because we're innovators, we fall in love with the problem. So to have a process where we go back and we review and we either pivot or reinvest is critical to keeping those investments going. So it's a bit about how we think about the portfolio, but of course, and we could leave it there, but I would argue that may as well not. Again, we're pushing ourselves, we're innovators, that's not good enough. So how do we then improve the odds for each of those investments? And I'm not at all claiming that this is an exhaustive list, but these are the most critical areas that we feel help us create even more successful innovation teams. So you can see them here, but to create a culture of innovation across the enterprise, to create as absolutely diverse teams as possible, and I'll dig into this last one more at the end, but to progressively invest through cross-functional development teams. All right, so innovation leadership. So we've found that there's a huge desire, of course, for innovation, for folks that want to work on really interesting problems, really interesting technology, and really progress a capability. Those folks, for no fault of their own, often don't understand the business very well. On the other extreme, we have, of course, the people that run our business, right? But they're often looking at the next day or the next week or the next month or maybe the next quarter, because it's their job, right? And they're trying to execute the business, but those also tend to be the people who understand the business. And this is very hard to do because there's very few of these people, as the slide kind of illustrates here. But we've found if you can find those few leaders that sit in this intersection, that are in the innovation team, that know how to progress a new technology or an innovation project, take those risks, but also understand the business, are that critical bridge builder to help your team identify those investments that could have a big impact, and to help those business leaders believe, understand, and then eventually kind of train both sides. Ideally, these innovation leaders start to pull these two bubbles together. And as the innovation team works on more relevant work and has more big wins, they start to get excited and they start to engage with the business more. But then the business also gets more excited about innovation and pulls them more. And these groups start to overlap. And that's where you can start to create this positive feedback loop where your innovation teams are more and more working on kind of the right things on their own, and the business at the same time is pulling more and more for the great work coming out of these excellent analytics teams. And of course, diversity. I want to emphasize really kind of two things here. First, I think I would say it's well established at this point that the more diverse different backgrounds, points of views that are brought into any conversation, but especially innovation, is critical, and really is one of the core things that allows an innovation team to innovate. I mean, the whole point, in my opinion, is to look at problems that have been looked at before, but look at them differently. And what's the best way to do that is to bring people that have had a different background, and that, of course, could be professional. I don't tend to want to staff an AI team just full of analytics and statisticians folks, physicists, chemists, engineers, and so on. Will bring different points of view, just as one example. And then, of course, cultural, all of what you think of as the classic diversity backgrounds as well, also bring with them different points of view and different approaches that help us really look at problems differently. Okay, and then finally, I'll spend a little bit of time here. Taking a progressive investment approach is something that we started doing a couple of years ago. That's really helped us both explore more, but build kind of more functional prototypes out of our R&D group. So a little bit of an eye chart here, I guess, but what we're trying to illustrate here is, vertically, we have kind of the number of projects that we're doing, right? So we want to, if we're trying to explore potential applications, potential technologies, we want to have many opportunities into what we would call discovery, just understanding what's possible. Of course, then some of those we end up saying, well, maybe the value is not there, or the pull isn't there from the business, or we're not aware of a good solution. So not all of those then go into research, but still many projects are, of course, being researched. And then, of course, as we go, we all know research doesn't necessarily always work out. So even fewer maybe go to a prototyping team. But then, of course, as you do a prototype, maybe you get new estimates of the value or the cost to scale, and then even fewer go to MVP. That is really, I would argue, the natural progression of innovation, of research. But it can be very tempting to kind of put the same type of team, the same investment across all of these. But we have found that often doesn't lead to optimal outcomes. And so now kind of adding, the secondary vertical axis, the size of the investment, and I would also say maybe the types of teams being different in each of these stages, very different, allows us to have the right talent and actually do more. So going from left to right again, when we're in discovery, of course, this isn't even kind of a full person's job, right? This is one person, or it tends to be spread across people, but hypothetically, one person can have many things in discovery, and these may be those leaders that understand the business better. This allows us, of course, to have many more discovery initiatives. Research, this is kind of what I would think of as more classic individual person on a specific research problem to understand what's feasible. Okay, but then we want to move and create some prototypes of our most promising, most valuable research. That individual researcher may not be well suited to create a good, robust, compelling prototype. So there, we actually even have a larger investment, a different type of investment. We start to have cross-functional, we call them pods, but think instead of just a data science researcher on their own, there's someone who can potentially build, it kind of depends on what's appropriate, but build or design a web application, or help build the data pipelines, help build the ML ops, and so on. It does vary. And then if the business is really excited and it's time to scale, of course, and there's very few of these, but of course, then we make the much larger investment and have a full kind of cross-business unit collaboration. What this allows us to do is it allows us to get that purple chart and have many projects in discovery and then fewer in research and so on. Okay, last but not least, first I'll make a claim just out of my experience, that innovation teams should never own mature products. A few of many reasons. One, of course, the more products you're keeping the lights on, the less talent you have on deck to make that next big bet. I also have found, at least in our teams, that an innovator's mindset is not often kind of tuned, or it is tuned rather, or trained for the next thing, and not for kind of continuous improvement or maintenance. And of course, there's often really not the right skill sets and support structures in place for a mature product, which can make it even more costly, in fact. So then the question is, because I've been in this place before, why do innovation teams end up owning products? And I guess I didn't put a slide in here, but I believe it's because often, or at least we didn't have a mature exit strategy. We didn't have a plan earlier on for how we were actually going to disengage from something that we created. So how do we do that? Now we clarify early and often with any stakeholder and through our teams that the goal is to exit. And it was probably the most important thing for us and our teams, for internal to R&D, for folks to understand that the goal is for the work that we do to move into the business and to not stay in R&D. There can be this tendency to have this culture of, well, we own this idea because we made it, but that's actually bad for everyone. It's bad for the business, but it's also bad for the innovation team. At the beginning, you might have noticed our logo has a beaker with kind of things coming up and out. So we've even tried to embody in our kind of imagery things leaving the lab and not staying. I think another reason is that there's just impatience, right? Maybe we can't align with the business on the potential, and we decide to go it alone. But the problem is that if R&D is, of course, doing, I think this is kind of saying the obvious, but if R&D is doing something alone, then the project isn't truly desirable, feasible, valuable to the business, or at least they don't understand it yet. And our cycles are better spent persuading or convincing them, or being persuaded, than to get into the exit trap. And then finally, I guess I kind of glossed over this earlier, but as we're increasing our investments, we actually partner more and more with our target stakeholder, to where there's this point where we've almost blurred the lines between the two teams. So the handoff almost happens more seamlessly instead of like a hard break. All right, I think I'm coming up on about time. Yeah, this is good. So you might say, well, you've just pontificated about some things that you've noticed. You didn't cite anything, you didn't bring any data, so prove it, right? So at 8451 Labs, we had an R&D group before, but we kind of pivoted with this different approach, and we're well into our second year leveraging this approach. We've had multiple exits, that we've called them, scaling across Kroger, driving many very, very handsome multiples over over our kind of budget or investment in R&D. And now, since we've been able to create those exits, the pipeline of potential exits that we have underway, potential opportunities, is really exciting. And we're with the same size team actually able to work I think last time we counted roughly 3 times as many kind of initiatives as we were in the past. So real quick takeaways. Of course, if we don't have, we sometimes refer to it as a funnel. If you don't have the funnel wide, but where you're constantly monitoring all the potential trends and doing all that discovery, you'll never find the big opportunities. And then once you do, create that ROI through managing risk. Be a portfolio manager, improve your odds through having the right teams and the right culture, and always have an exit strategy. And with that, that's all I brought in terms of content, and I'm happy to move on to questions, Jeff.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. This was really great, Andrew, and really a lot of your messages really resonated with me, both the managing of the portfolio and the exit strategy. So I'm going to kick off with a few questions, but in the meantime, participants, please, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A functionality in the Zoom meeting room, and we'll address the questions, as many questions as we can during this conversation. So, first question I have: could you share, Andrew, given your many years of experience, how the analytics journey has evolved? Right, how your analytics journey, and in particular, how your role and the role of analytics in organization has changed.
Well, I think I guess it's absolutely changed. So how's it evolved? I think when I started, at least, the data was much more structured, and the problems were, in some sense, better defined. I kind of sometimes talk with folks on my team about the good old days where all we had to do was make a forecast, right? And of course, I'm not minimizing forecasting. We still have forecasting teams. It's very important. But everything was structured and it was more simple versus now there's so much. Either the data sets are truly massive, like think at the household level, or we have video streams, and of course text and conversation and all these things that are much squishier in some sense when you try to actually get to an outcome to optimize. I think the other for me is that when I started, analytics was a very powerful tool to help transform the business, but now analytics is becoming the core of the business, right? And it's not just at Kroger, but everyone I'm talking to in industry, it's not about like, oh, how do we also set up an analytics team to get some extra value because we heard that's a good thing to do, but it's like, how do we create data and analytics to be the core of our business that we build everything else around, which is of course extremely exciting.
Great. So you mentioned the presentation, the need for diversified workforce and diversity, and you also mentioned, a lot of technical and professional domains that your team needs. So how do you go about, building this workforce? How do you hiring or growing internally? What's your approach to creating these sort of diversified teams?
Yeah, I don't think there's one approach, but I can think of at least maybe the top 3 areas. So of course on the hiring side, there's of course typical. I'll start with the most typical. So there's of course just recruiters. You post, you interview, right? And you try to find those really interesting resumes, and then people to talk to that maybe somehow look a little bit different than kind of the classic, like the classic path. University partnerships, university partnerships has naturally been very valuable. Both of actually for progressing, it's kind of a double-edged sword in a very positive way. Like both progressing innovation itself, university partners can be very effective, but also those professors and students end up creating a pipeline of talent as well. However, I think if we just did that, we would be we would be in trouble. It is important to be able to bring up innovators inside too, because I do think it's important to have, you know, these folks in all these different industries from the outside, but it is also important to have some folks that really know your business, right? And but they may not have all the skills that that you need. So we do invest in a lot of both upskilling programs and just as we collaborate. It's kind of terrible to put it this way, but as we collaborate across, you know, across business teams, there have been times where we've strategically asked someone if they'd like to join R&D because like they really seem to have like the right mindset and really know the business and know the exciting opportunities, and then of course help train them up as well.
Wow, interesting. So what has been, you know, the impact and commitment of senior level management, and how important was that to your organization's success?
Well, I'm truly proud to work at 8451 and Kroger for many reasons, but one, because they've always been very committed to investing in research and development. So it's always been a core part of the strategy. I mean, of course, we always, you know, argue, you know, it's a typical thing. We'll argue for more money, and you know, we want to do this and that, and sometimes you get told no. But that's all just in the course of a day's work. But it's always been a core part of our strategy. I do think that recently we've gotten a lot of value out of pushing for our best innovation leaders. So those folks that I kind of showed that one diagram, that are the really good communicators and to know the business, to spend more time with those senior business leaders so that they understand the problems in the business and also have the rapport and the trust. So maybe that's what I'm building up to, is that we've always invested in innovation teams, but recently we spent a lot of time building trust across senior leaders, which has been just phenomenal for building even more pull for that kind of positive feedback loop.
So is that being just, you know, so how does that work exactly, if I'm asked, you know, getting your innovation to sit with the, you know, the business people and getting them to invest the time, also the business people, I mean? Yeah,
so it can depend on the application. Some of them are just very simple things like, hey, actually go out and report back to your senior business leaders what the progress is and get their feedback and make sure that you're working towards the things that they thought you were working towards, right? Which sounds simple, but that's actually not always simple, right? But when it's possible, we also maybe I'll put this kind of bluntly, because I have put it in my team bluntly. We make sure that we have our team kind of come down out of our ivory tower and get shoulder to shoulder with the folks doing the work. So if it's possible, so for instance, if we're doing work that would ultimately impact a store, we actually go out to that application and get with the store managers and get their feedback, maybe do the job if we're, you know, allowed to or capable to actually experience it, see it, talk to them, go to the warehouses, so that well, one, we end up working on more relevant things, and it's clear that we really do care about solving their problem, and we're not doing this just because, you know, oh, we have to solve some problem to pay our bills.
Wow, nice. So what has been, you know, the most challenging problem you have faced for the technical management in your role? And of course, you can discuss more than one if you want to. Yeah.
In the talk, I mean, of course, there's several, but in the talk, you know, I talked about kind of not owning a capability indefinitely and transitioning it to the business. It's a really delicate dance, I guess, because on the one hand, so let's just take an example. Let's say you built some great forecasting tool and it's the best and the company wants to use it across the whole enterprise. Well, that R&D shouldn't do that, right? R&D shouldn't be owning a whole forecasting platform. There should be a dedicated team. But the problem is, on the one hand, you got people together that truly love building great forecasts, right? Because that's what they do, and they worked on it for, you know, maybe they worked on it for years, and they built it, and it's great, and it's time to scale it. But but you want those people and you want them to love it, right? On the other hand, you then need to turn around and convince them that, hey, we're not going to work on that anymore, right? This other team needs to own that now, and we need to move to the next thing. It's like, oh, well, it's my thing, right? Well, it's not anymore, right? And getting folks both excited about digging deep into a problem, but at the same time, a bit later, getting them excited about kind of like seeing it grow up and move on. It's hard because people get it, but I mean, myself included, we all get attached to projects, get attached to work, get attached to things that we've built. But in R&D, they by definition don't stay in R&D. So getting folks okay with seeing it move on, it can be very challenging.
Wow. Yeah, that's a important point. So maybe turning to some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Zohar has asked, how did selling this new approach to leadership go?
I'm thinking back to it. It went very well, actually. I will be honest. When I came with this approach, leadership was looking for a different approach to innovation, we didn't just say like, hey, this is the new way. We said this is what we're going to try, right? So we're looking for a new way. There's some really good reasons we believe this can work. We've even gone out and talked to consultants that we trust and other labs, and they've done similar things, and we're going to adapt it here. So that helped, but in general, we were, I guess, lucky in that there was kind of a thirst for change, which made them fairly receptive. I don't know that we'll always have that privilege, but that's definitely where we were when we took this approach.
Okay, thanks. So Anya has asked, can you talk about the size of your group and specific skills that they have, and other skills that you would like to add that you currently don't have?
Yeah. So in the 8451 group, so there is the Kroger R&D group as well, that I'm responsible for, and I'll just quickly say that they're about 50 folks, and they work on 4 key pillars: video analytics, AI applications, which does overlap quite a bit, simulation and operations research, and kind of Internet of Things and sensors. And then on the 8451 side, it's about half that. So there's about 25 folks. And there we're more evenly split between advanced analytics or AI and kind of classic statisticians and operations research. In terms of where I want it to go, I guess I'll say that I'm sure we've all felt that finding the right talent, especially in the machine learning or AI space, is it's very competitive. So there's always room to grow there. However, I still want us to maintain a really great operations research presence, because if I'm being really honest, we drive just an enormous amount of value from optimizing processes. Right now, as we innovate, we optimize bigger and bigger processes, right, and get to bigger and bigger size of prize. So I still think we will invest in those 2 areas. I think maybe another that I want to see more is I do want to see us invest more through partnerships, external partnerships. And I think there is a talent component to having the right folks on our side that can manage those partnerships in the right way to make sure that all the parties involved get something out of it.
Okay, thanks. So Irv has asked, can you give a sense as to how many projects you are managing at once, and what % of time do you exit or abandon in innovation?
Yeah. I'll just talk about 8451 here. So out of those 25 people, out of those, now I'm kind of counting them up in my head. Out of those 25 people, we actually have about 15 to 20 projects at any given time, but there are very different stages of maturity. So we'll have at any given time maybe 2 or 3 projects that have several folks, right? And that was more when I was talking about that prototype space. And then quite a few projects that are in very, very early phase. In terms of how long an initiative lasts, it's a little bit of actually a loaded question if you're taking this kind of fail often approach. For a project that ends up being successful, which is almost none of them, right? Because it's R&D, I would say it's probably 1 to 2 years is roughly the full, like from discovery to research to prototype to helping the business adopt. But most projects don't last that long because somewhere along that journey, we end up deciding to go in another direction. So, in discovery, we usually only take, it usually ends up taking a few months because of just time to take conversations. There's very little investment in that time. And then research is almost always less than a year. And then building prototypes and scaling probably depends a lot on the project.
Okay, thanks. And another question from Arnie. How committed is senior management to using data analytics to give Kroger a competitive advantage over other companies in their market space?
Oh, extremely. Very committed. And I guess what I'll just say there is that, they have been for a long time, and that's it's part of the 8451 investment. It's really part of our heritage at 8451 in general, is being Kroger's commitment to driving value through data analytics.
Okay, great. So going back to some of my questions.
Yeah.
So COVID has resulted in many changes in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say something, about the current post-COVID work norms at 8451s and how they compare to the work before COVID?
Yeah, and I can talk both about R&D and COVID overall, or COVID, not COVID overall, R&D and 8451 overall. So, we've always been a technology company. So, remote has always been part of what we did. But pre-COVID, in general, most folks were in one of our offices and generally came to the office every day, and the office was full and busy, and as part of working at 8451. I'll note that actually R&D was largely remote for a long time. So we were maybe remote before remote was cool. And that it was really interesting when COVID changed the world. It actually kind of helped put us on this weird equal footing because suddenly everyone was remote. I'm sure some of you folks remember the days where, like, if you've ever worked remote when a company mostly doesn't, like, oh, we forgot to set up the video call for you, or, oh, can you please not, shake your ice right next to the microphone? I can't hear. And one day that they kind of all went away, which is just, kind of I don't know if silver lining is the right word, but suddenly the whole company got really upskilled in being remote. And now we're very hybrid. So, I'm in the office right now. There's not nearly as many people as there usually are, or as there was pre-COVID, but there's a bunch of people in the office. But it's hybrid, flexible work. On average, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday tend to have just a natural draw of people to the office for just things going on. But more hybrid, more remote, but we continue to learn and adapt. I don't think that we've found the magic formula yet, even though COVID is starting to be more and more in the, well, not the disease, but the lockdown and all that's more and more in the rearview mirror. But I think we're still learning and adapting.
Okay. Can you provide any insights into how your work has impacted 8451 or Kroger's transition to new businesses and any challenges you see for the future?
Into new businesses, yeah. So I mean, so 8451 and Kroger in general are always looking at new investment opportunities. R&D is sometimes a partner in those, and sometimes not, because sometimes they're not very analytics or kind of data science focused. But in fact, it kind of goes back to what I was saying about partnerships. We will continue to be a partner in that growth. I do think that at least the way that we approach R&D here, we will be focused on mostly improving kind of the core businesses. There's still a lot of opportunity to be had to have a really big impact on what is already a very, very large business. So I don't know if that was exactly an answer, but
yeah, that's the answer, definitely. So I think you alluded a little in when you say regarding the exit strategy and transitioning your transitioning your successful projects.
Yeah.
But it's a common challenge, and I guess this is part of it, that working across various boundaries, such as with IT organizations, marketing, financial service is challenging when you implement analytics services. So can you comment on that within 8451? Are there any interesting stories you would like to share that you have worked through?
Yeah, I think so in general, for any business to decide that they want to scale a new capability, it's got to make sense, right? That basically, let's just say the business case has to make sense, right? And there was a project that we did, roughly say 4 years ago to 2 years ago, that we worked it, we partnered with the business, we tested it just over and over and over and over, and it clearly worked. And this next part is definitely partially on us, and we learned a lot from it. And then we finally got with the business and said, okay, no more tests. We have plenty of data. Let's build out the business case to decide, like, if we're going to invest money and kind of take this to the moon, or if we're going to put it on ice. And we did the business case, and with the state of some of the constraints at that time in the business, without getting into specifics, even with the great, data science under the hood, there's no way that we would ever scale this capability. So, we were all very disappointed because we worked on it for so long and it worked so well. But, eventually we wound it down and we documented everything, and everyone moved on and worked on other projects. But now we actually formalize this. One of our key research leader, Ritesh, and I believe he's spoken to folks at Informs before. He now calls it the vault, where we don't necessarily, like, projects don't die. Projects aren't killed. Projects go in the vault, right? Because sometimes the business just isn't ready. And so we documented it. We made sure the business understood what we had done and what we were capable of, and just didn't quite let the business forget about it. Every once in a while, maybe like once or twice a year, we'd bring up, like, hey, remember we did do this thing back then and it worked really well. And it took about 2 years later, and we revived that business case, but the business had changed and suddenly was much more feasible. And now, in fact, that project that, we were all sad and kind of mourned, it's kind of its unpleasant end is actually being scaled across the enterprise right now. So yeah, I think that was the most insightful story, on at least two. One is that we now are thinking about the potential business case, and there's a lot of uncertainty when you're super early, but the potential business case for what the future could look like sooner, right? So that if there's some very obvious reasons that something couldn't work, maybe we don't work it as long as we would have. but also to know that, hey, sometimes something you've done is great, but the business isn't ready yet. And that's okay to pause it or put it in the vault, as we now call it, and work on something else while we wait for the business to get ready. And then we bring it out of the vault and scale it.
Nice. So we're nearing the end of the session. So I want to ask people if have any more questions, if they want to post them in the Q&A. We have another question from Arnie. So it goes like this: in our area, we have Harris Teeter, and there are really nice stores inside. Does your group also work on the layout, composition, etc. of the stores themselves?
Great question. It depends on what Arnie literally means by some of those words. So I guess I'll just answer it more generally, both for 8451 and then for R&D. We do, 8451 does partner with Kroger on how we design current stores and stores of the future. So the very short answer is yes. R&D specifically, you can imagine it's actually a very challenging optimization problem to have maybe to know what the ideal assortment is in every store. That's already hard, but then to determine the ideal assortment under the constraint that the more each store is different, the more expensive it is to have each store have a slightly different assortment. So we are actually very active in the space of helping Kroger determine the optimal assortment of its stores. That's more the items in the stores than the layout of the store. But yes, so basically, yes. So Arnie, if you don't like your particular Harris Teeter, I suppose you could send us a note, and we probably won't do anything about it. But but yeah, I mean, it's a very short answer is yes. Both 8451 and R&D, we are engaged in. Of course, the layout's not changed that much, but we're definitely engaged in kind of the assortment and the strategies inside the store.
Okay. So. A follow-on question to the to the exit strategy and the and the work across ice. So when projects are successful and scaled out, who ends up owning them? Which part of the which organization within 8451 or Kroger ends up owning them?
Yeah, so both 8451 and Kroger Technology are product-led team, or have a product-led structure. So I guess the short answer is, is one of two scenarios. Either there already is a product team. So think a team, with engineers, the whole product stack, right? I won't list them all since we're running out of time. The whole product stack, product leaders and all that. And they would own the capability going forward in the code base and the execution and the support and all that. Occasionally, though, in fact, this is happening right now in one space for us. We come up with something that's kind of so new that there isn't a product team yet to own it. Labs still doesn't own it, though. We instead partner with the business to create, again, a new business case to stand up a new product team. That in this case won't just own this particular capability. It may be the first capability, but then we'll own more capabilities in the space in general, and it will grow, which is actually very exciting for us. So then we're like in on the ground floor with this new product team and can then bring new innovation to them as they scale out in all kinds of directions.
Wow, nice. So I guess maybe a final question. So, and this sort of appeared in the slide when you showed the technology. So how do you see generative AI and large language models impacting both your work and the work of the business?
I think the really short answer is that I know it's going to impact it a lot, and I don't know how. I still think it's a little bit too early to know how for sure. I think there are some things that are pretty well established. We're already seeing things like, writing code, for instance, is already getting much more efficient, but I think that's just scratching the surface. However, which use cases really kind of stick and scale versus which maybe don't quite work as much as we imagine. And I do think we all have big imaginations about it right now, myself included. I think is uncertain. So yeah, to summarize, I think it will have a huge impact, and we're there with everyone else trying to figure out what exactly it'll be.
Okay. Okay, so we have 2 more minutes. I want to, if anyone has any final questions, if not, type in. If not, I guess we can, I don't see any further questions. So really, thanks again. This was really fascinating. Thank you
so
very
much for
much
having me.
for this, and thanks everyone for attending, and see you in the next.